It's back and bigger than ever. It's the unofficial 40 from Soonerscoop.com. Now, here's the entire Sooner Scoop crew. Carrie, Josh, Eddie, and Bob.
All right, welcome back. It is the unofficial 40 podcast right here on Soonerscoop.com. The entire crew is here as it is Portal Madness. I want to try and not say that other port name that's... we're going to talk to Bob Przbillo, hopefully coming up here a little bit, but it's rough goings for Porter Moser in the portal. It's been better for Oklahoma football as they have been getting some guys, and I know we've got plenty to talk about here with what's going on with Damonic Williams and exactly what all of it means that he came to campus for a couple of days, and I know we've done plenty of YouTube stuff. And by the way, I just want to start out. I want to give a shout out to all you guys, the crew here at Sooner Scoop. Just been killing it. George, you've been killing it in the portal. And the info that you've been bringing has made us as good as we've ever been, and it's much appreciated. You're doing a great job.
Thank you. Can we get me on the intro pod, Carrie?
That's another story entirely. I don't know if you've done that good of a job yet.
I think I kind of like not being on it. It's
become a bigger bit for you to not be on it.
I agree.
On it. Because once I get the big voice guy to do it, it's just going to be it's going to be
I
over.
think there's a lot of people that are just tuning in to see if they hear it in the beginning or not.
I had someone that we deal with on a regular basis that has a company. It represents a company that helps us out a lot. I'll just say it was Quick Trip. Quick Trip contacted me and said, how much would it cost to get a band to perform that song? That who was that came up with that on Twitter?
I don't know. George showed it to me last Friday.
That AI.
Yeah.
I can't remember. It was pretty good, though.
It was
kind of a banger.
Yeah. It was
so bad. It's great.
Yeah, that's exactly what it was.
It was kind of like, there's a little Cobra Kai vibe on that, maybe a little bit, little hair metal. So I don't know. Maybe I'll look into it. Quick Trip. You're kind of busy sponsoring my Royals, who aren't terrible. They've got the patch, and now they've got the backdrop. They're all over the place in Kauffman Stadium. So, anyway,
they're not the White Sox. I think that's probably the best thing that you could say right now about a baseball team, or the Astros.
I'm on a show with
last night.
I don't know George's team, but I'm on a podcast with a Royals fan and a Cubs fan, and I've got the most ass team of the bunch. I don't know what the hell's going on. It's confusing.
Well, I think injuries. I mean, starting pitching, it seems like has been just completely miserable right now. They're playing the Cubs.
Every game it's 5-0 in the third. It's just they're down big from the start.
Look, the Royals have two notable players that most of baseball knows. I'm happy with that, even if they're not pitchers. Salvi Perez and Bobby Witt Jr. What?
God
Are you
bless
taking
Salvi.
a shot at Salvi Perez?
God bless him, but he should never be uttered in the same sentence as Bobby Witt Jr.
He's got a world championship ring, sir.
And congratulations to him, but I think Bobby Witt Jr., he's like the future of baseball.
Well, yeah, but, I'm not taking, this is so you think I'm taking a shot at Bobby Witt Jr. I know he's your boy.
I'm just saying
and you're sticking up for your boys,
Salvi
but that's
Perez
not a shot at Bobby Witt Jr. to say that Salvi Perez is a notable player in Major League Baseball.
Who gives a shit?
I think that's the answer.
Let's talk about the transfer portal.
Oh my God. I'm pretty. I'm George. I want to be a part of this too. All right, George.
I will say, by the way, the Major League Baseball blackout rules is the biggest crock of shit ever.
I just paid $150 so we could watch games in here, and there's probably 2 games that we could actually watch.
Well, we can watch every one of them, just not in the blackout region. But the Cubs are playing the Astros. Last night they were on TBS, and we're under the blackout rule for a national broadcast. It's insane.
They've always been the worst. They've always been the worst.
It's absolutely insane.
Jesus, that's terrible.
And we don't even get the Astros games here.
You're upsetting George right now, even more.
I have to subscribe to there's one streaming carrier that carries the Astros game. So I have to subscribe to them for 6 months a damn year, and I don't turn them on for anything other than Astros games. Now, the Astros may be making this really simple, and by June, I won't need that subscription anymore. But it's a shit show.
I haven't even bothered.
Blackout stuff is
ALS
terrible.
is terrible.
I haven't even bothered to check because, like, as far as like illegal streams go,
Yeah, I watched it last night.
does
I
that
watched one last
happen
night.
for Major League Baseball? Because like
Yeah.
college football, you can watch anything on YouTube. Even they just like someone in Taipei or something is streaming every college football on YouTube. NFL, because YouTube owns the right, they have locked that shit down. Like you cannot watch, not on YouTube. You might be able to go to like Reddit or something and find an illegal stream, but it's almost impossible on YouTube. But baseball, I guess I should try and start seeing. I mean, I paid $150 for the package.
I mean, usually,
feel bad for
usually
watching
the
a legal
Royals
stream.
games are at least on Cox. We
Right.
don't even have an outlet to get Astros games. And I don't ever look them out. I don't seek it. But
Well, it's
just
because
completely bullshit.
here, like, if the Rangers will supersede the Astros, just like the Cardinals will supersede
But they're not
the
even on
Royals.
Bally, is what I'm saying. Like Astros baseball. It's,
Oh,
it's on
okay.
that cable network that Josh has to get.
Oh, okay.
So, like, usually if you're in the blackout region, if the Cubs are playing the Cardinals or if they're playing the Rangers or whoever, we can get those games here. You just have to watch the home team broadcast. With the Astros, it's not even, you can't, there's no possible way to get it. I would have paid last night for the 3-game series.
So is
you
it?
guys are in a shit region.
Yeah,
Plus
it's
you
terrible.
get like I know the Rangers. I'm sure the Astros. Are the Cardinals and Royals blacked out too?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
they are.
You have to hope
think
that
that-
they're showing your game on Fox Sports Midwest,
Right.
in order to watch it most
Right.
of the time.
And sometimes you will. Like, I think like once or twice a week you do get Astros games. I think the other crazy one is the Rockies. We're in the blackout for the Rockies as well.
Oh my god.
It's ridiculous.
It's always been that way, though.
Shouldn't be surprised though.
All right. Look, we got a lot to talk about with football. We got a lot of stuff going on outside of just the U40. This week, yesterday, we recorded a podcast with Jordan Evans, recently retired. Keep an eye out for that. That will be out tomorrow. But that was a really fun program. It's been a lot of fun having some of the
He's such a good
former
dude.
players. Such a good dude. You guys sat in there with him and talked for a while, chopped
Talking
it up.
about high school, his high school games. The one that you were at, Josh, where he returned the kick against Broken Arrow. We had a bunch of practice video of him. He's like, I've never seen this video before.
We even had college video
Oh,
that
that's
he was
awesome.
like, you got to send me that. I've never seen that before.
Yeah, I sent it over to him. He's just such a good guy, and he had a great career. He had a really
Yeah.
good NFL career.
I mean, none of us expected him to play 5 years in the league.
No.
It's awesome.
Guys, midway through his senior year, you were like, I don't know if he's going to keep a starting job. And then he just kind of flipped it on and everything changed.
That meeting with his dad, he talked about it on the family business podcast yesterday. So that's coming up. We've got a practice report that's going to be up today as well, along with this podcast. And then stickball, we'll see. Might have to change that till tomorrow because I'm a sleepy ass and got here late. So anyway, all of that being said, we're looking around. I'm looking around the studio now. I don't have perfect vision like some people sitting in the studio, but it is the Enjoy Vision, fresh perspective look around, who there's no one better to talk about it than the man with perfect vision sitting next to me, Mr. Eddie Radusky.
Unfortunately, they don't offer anything for hearing, and you'd be able to hear your alarm clock. Enjoy Vision is the best vision laser vision center in Oklahoma City. Not even close. Combination of mind-blowing technology, experienced eyeball surgeons, and exceptional patient care was life-changing for me. What they're doing for the Unofficial 40 listeners, they're giving $400 off LASIK. All you got to do is go to enjoywithme.com. That is the letter NJOY withme.com. Use promo code U40 for $400 off LASIK if you are so interested. Enjoy Vision. This is where you LASIK.
Sitting to my right is a man who has been working his ass off. He also is a man who has worn a baseball jersey twice but hates baseball discussion on the YouTube channel. So he's wearing a Thunder jersey today.
I just think baseball jerseys are cool and fun to wear, and I like certain players. Julio Rodriguez had his first home run yesterday, 435-footer, beat the Rangers 4-0. So I do pay attention a little bit.
So anyway,
That's a really random poll, George.
I just saw it on ESPN. I just
a
saw it
random
on
guy
ESPN.
to just throw out there.
Yeah, I just like Julio.
George, it's been portal season and it has not ended, and it's been kind of fun because, look, and you guys talked about this the other day on the portal report, and Josh, you were on that, but like It's time, and I've seen your YouTube comments, and I get it. It's a narrative that's formed, but it's time to stop with the OU isn't going to play the NIL game. Or even to go so far as to say Brent Venables doesn't want, to divide the locker room by having guys that are getting paid too much in NIL. I don't think any of that applies anymore. I think we have to give Brent some credit from the guy that came in here and had his introductory press conference after he was hired. Some of the things he said about recruiting and not offering, even guys that he just took a commit from a 2027 kid. I believe in that press conference, he basically said he wasn't going to offer kids, before they, when they were sophomores in high school and stuff. So he's adapted. That's what I'm trying to get at. And I think he's adapting even further with the NIL. And I think part of that is just the personnel department that they're putting together, the commitment that they're making to that, George, and having some of those guys that help them, make decisions that they know are good for the program.
Yeah, I think that there's a lot of people helping out, and I think it's also just been a more willingness to spend, and I think that you're seeing that in some of the guys they've landed. I know everybody wants to talk about Damonic Williams, and yes, his asking price is pretty high, and he's going to end up wherever he ends up going to get a lot of money. But if you don't think OU's playing the game, they wouldn't have gotten a Jermaine Lowell as quickly as they did, or a Branson Hickman. I mean, these are two guys that some of the bigger schools wanted. When you talk about Texas A&M was interested in both. USC was interested. Washington. These are some of the schools, Arkansas, TCU, schools that have NIL money were interested in these guys. Now, we'll see how Damonic Williams plays out. There's been just some absolutely absurd numbers that have been thrown out there. And I think Oklahoma has thrown an absurd number out there. That doesn't mean they're going to get Damonic Williams, but I do think that you would be naive to think that Oklahoma is no longer playing the game, at least to an extent. They are definitely playing it a lot more than, say, they were a year ago.
I mean, did you see the star of the spring game? You don't think that they're paying Deion Burks for his services?
Exactly, and I think that's the big thing, is to know that Oklahoma, and that doesn't mean Oklahoma is going to go out there and if there's just some crazy asking price for one of these guys, they're not going to just spend their money like crazy like that. But they're not going to be irresponsible. But I do think they're willing to go a little bit further than what they maybe were previously.
Two things that you mentioned there. I am told by somebody that I guess has spoken to him that it is actually Lole.
Lole?
Yeah.
I don't know.
I'm not saying. I mean, like, you act like that's a negative. I'm just saying,
I don't know. I just don't know.
I'm trying to help you. Anyway, Lole apparently is how it's
great tension between
pronounced.
Carey and George today, Josh.
It's well, you fluffed him up to this point. I've seen your YouTube shows all week. You've been picking at him pretty good. But the other thing is, how crazy is it to think that Deion Burks was really one of the first guys that OU got in the portal, period, and then all these other guys kind of came after him. But he was early. He was one of the earlier guys that they signed in the transfer portal, wasn't he?
But, like, just this year?
Like, when this round started for this next year.
Yeah, I mean, I think like Spencer Brown was probably one of the first people to jump in, and then Deion Burks wasn't too far after.
Yeah, and I think Deion Burks, though, they definitely threw some money at him, but I think he was also just looking for a place that he could really excel, and
Sure.
Oklahoma fit that pretty easily. And he also, I mean, just talking to him, he doesn't strike me as a guy that's just out here chasing money. You're going to run into some of those guys in the portal, but OU had to pay to get him,
I don't think, though, that at the same time, it just seems like, and maybe it's a coincidence, maybe there's something to it. I think that the defensive tackles that are in the portal, whether it be right now or even all the way back into the fall, that they know that they are needed because everybody's looking for them, and they can kind of demand whatever price that they want.
Well, I think, if I were, a kid, like what I've kind of noticed is the longer you wait, the better. If you're a good player, because that's going to create need, that's going to create a little bit of panic in the marketplace. I mean, like, Williams is in as good a place as anybody could be in right now. And I mean, I know it might not be all about the money, but it also is going to, force people's hands to offer him more, no matter what he demands. Going to 5 different places, that number's probably going to grow just naturally.
Yeah, and they know that. I just think his situation's interesting to follow because I think a lot of people saw him leave campus on Sunday and said, oh, well, Oklahoma's not going to get him. And I'm not going to sit here and tell you OU's going to get Damonic Williams. I honestly have no idea, but I do think that the intention is to go on the visits, and whether that's because they want the money to go up or because he's genuinely curious, I'm not sure. I think it's kind of telling, and that's how this goes in these recruitments, as the money goes up. And they know that, Damonic Williams is a very wanted guy. You look at his list of visits, these are people that can throw around a lot of money when you talk about Texas, LSU, Missouri, and Oregon are the visits. And maybe he commits to Texas today, but as of last night, when I talked to some folks around him, including himself, the plan has been to go on all these visits. Now, if Oklahoma can go out and get somebody else before he even finishes his visits, I think Oklahoma will do that. And there's some guys out there that they're interested in. The 2 guys from Michigan State, Derek Harmon is somebody that they hope to get on campus, and Simeon Barrow, who was just at LSU the last couple days. They also hope to get him on campus. So, if one of those 2 guys, if they're able to get them to visit, and one of those guys commits, then maybe they move on from a Damonic Williams who, was hoping to have a decision by midweek next week. We'll see if that actually happens, because if he goes on the Oregon visit, which he hasn't nailed down an exact date on that, you could be talking about another week and a half before he comes to a decision. Oklahoma, I don't get the sense, wants to wait too long.
Look, I understand, we're hearing numbers, not just in football, but, big numbers being thrown around in basketball. At some point, though, I have to think, with Missouri, with these names that keep coming up, Oregon, that they've been very active in the NIL market, and they've been paying, top dollar. And OU really hasn't. And now they're kind of in that game, it sounds like. Does that give them an edge? Because they don't have to go back to their donors, who probably have a little bit of donor fatigue or NIL fatigue, okay, well, you told me if we get this guy, he's going to make us a number 1 defense in the country. So we get this guy, and now there's another guy. You're saying they got to pay him the same thing too?
I mean, I don't think that the people are idiots. I think you'd have to be an idiot, I guess is what I'm saying, if you didn't realize you need more than 1 guy.
Well, I'm not saying at the defensive tackle. I'm just saying overall your roster. Think about Missouri. How many big NIL deals have they made over this last year? Josh, what would you think? I mean,
I think that
you mean for new guys or just in general?
New guys, recruits, and portal.
Yeah, I mean,
I guess they've made such a splash on the defensive line. You think that maybe it's more than I think it is?
Yeah, I mean, they got the kid from Michigan State, the Zion Young kid that's a good player. They had several. I mean, it's got to be at least a dozen. I mean, that's part of it too, though, that I don't think people want to acknowledge. Missouri and Ole Miss, I've said it a few times, they see this as their year. They see this as the window. This is their opportunity. So they're kind of putting all their chips in. Okay, this is we got the best chance to maybe make a playoff and really make a run, and then you hope you start building from that going forward, and recruiting picks up and all that other stuff. But I think they're being timely. I just think it's smart. But I agree, there is going to be a fatigue. I mean, you can only push the I don't know if the panic button's the right word, but the alarm so many times before people just stop answering.
Well, and there's also, I got to think, the locker room part of it, I think, can't be ignored. I mean, can you build a championship team out of essentially spare parts of guys that either weren't happy where they were highly recruited out of high school? Are they just going to be the same guys, or are they going to be guys that did produce and are just really there for the money more than they are for, winning football games? And it didn't, like we said, it didn't work at A&M, didn't work at Miami, hasn't worked yet at a really noticeable level anywhere yet.
Yeah, that's the big test next year is can those programs kind of find that success? And I think Oklahoma has kind of been in between on that. They go out and they fill certain spots that they feel like they could upgrade, but they're not going and just taking guys at every single position. They're very deliberate about who they're going to take and at what position. I mean, I know a lot of people have talked about offensive tackle, and OU needs to go out and get an offensive tackle in the portal. Well, OU doesn't think there's an offensive tackle worth taking in the transfer portal right now. They do think that there's several defensive linemen that fit what they need. And so I think picking
That's where
and choosing
tampering comes in.
I think picking and choosing and not just taking, there's a clear difference. And you look at a school like Louisville. Louisville goes out in the winter portal and just lands all these guys. Well, now all these guys are leaving, and it sounds like maybe some of the money wasn't there at a school like at Louisville. Maybe the promises weren't kept there. So I think that it's a fine line. You have to have a balance. And so it's going to be interesting to see. I do think Oklahoma's playing it right, and they're going after the right kids right now. And I do think they're going to land a second defensive lineman. It's just a matter of who and when, because I would love to sit here and tell you again that they're going to get Damonic Williams or whatever. That just seems like a process that's going to take a while, and it's just going to maybe be the highest bidder situation, and maybe Oklahoma's the highest bidder. We'll see. But I also wouldn't be shocked if Oklahoma finds somebody that they can land quicker, that they'll just land them instead.
Well, I think you want to see what happens. You've talked so much about Williams' mother and how much she enjoyed the visit. I think Josh, you and Eddie, you maybe have said the same things. But it'll be interesting to see what comes out of Texas. Is it the same kind of vibe? Like, does the family love it? Or would they want to see him there? Because Josh, I think at some point Oklahoma, if you get a read on that and maybe it didn't go well at Texas, maybe that's when you press him and you say, "Look, we have to move on." We've got other guys that we're looking at. Just if the mom really does want him at OU, if Dominic really wants to be at OU, like, don't you have to kind of put is it your only chance, and maybe it's a Hail Mary just to put their feet to the fire and say, "Look, if this is what you want, you have to take it now."
I mean, that can work. Again, it's a Hail Mary. It would be very much about how you felt about your secondary option. Like, how big do you feel the gap is between Damonic Williams and whoever you would get to replace him? But to me, we talked about it on the portal report earlier this week. To me, you don't do that until you've got the guy on campus and you're getting that vibe. Like, this is about to happen. I think we might be able to close this guy before he leaves campus. At that point, I put the call into Damonic Williams. I don't care if he's on another visit to somewhere else and say, "Dominic, this is what's going on." Basically, you have this call. I can buy you 20, 30 minutes if you want to talk with your mom about it or whatever. But from there, we got to make a move. We can't come up empty. So we want it to be you. We're going to meet the number that you need to meet. But past that point, we've got to we've got to have sustainable numbers for ourselves for this season, and you're going to have to do whatever's best for you beyond us.
And I think it's with Dominic, it's one of those interesting cases where, yeah, he loved his visit. His mom loved the visit. That's all great. But look, these kids have agents now, and these agents are trying to get the best deal for their clients. And I know that people don't like it that way, but that's the reality. And going on these other visits, like Carrie said earlier, the price is probably going to go up. And so it's a business. And so we'll see how it plays out. I just think Oklahoma is more than willing to move on if they have to, if this thing gets dragged out, because they just keep going on these other visits. And maybe that helps them. And I think it's also, I keep saying this, but pay attention to where a Simeon Barrow commits. Like, if he commits to LSU, does LSU all of a sudden get out of the race for a guy like Damonic Williams, who I think LSU, everybody's talking about Texas in that race. I think LSU is a very serious player in landing Damonic Williams. If OU's in the lead right now, which I don't know if they are anymore, but LSU's right there, despite not going on the visit yet. So I think that they're definitely a school to watch. What does Derek Harmon do? He's been kind of difficult to get a hold of, so I'm not really sure. I think Auburn's very interested there. So I think that watching some of where these other guys land could indicate where Oklahoma ends up going. And also a quick clarification. I reached out to some folks at the SEC. I know there's been some questions on the transfer rules. Grad transfers cannot go from one SEC school to another in the spring. They are treated the same as undergraduate. And then for guys that were played in the SEC last year, transferred out of the SEC, and are now back in the portal, they can transfer to an SEC school and play next year. So, for example,
as long as they hadn't transferred to an SEC school, from SEC to SEC,
Oh yeah, you can't do that.
Right.
But if you say, for example, played at Alabama last year, transferred to Michigan in the winter, went through spring football at Michigan, and then got back in the portal, you could go to an SEC school and play immediately. So
like Caden Proctor.
But Caden Proctor also went back to Alabama, so I think that's a unique one. But yes, if Caden Proctor went in and went to a different SEC school,
right?
I know there's the kid from A&M that's the offensive tackle that's been brought up. I think the kid from Tennessee who went, I want to say, to Louisville and then back in the portal now. Like, those kids can play next year if they were to choose an SEC school. I know that's been a big topic.
That's one I know. Will Norman, the Florida kid, the
yes.
D tackle that went to Marshall, and now he's back in. I know some people have brought that up. That shocks me. That if they're going to allow that, like, what are we even doing? Like, that's such an easy loophole to just skirt the whole thing. Because where do you draw the line? Like, what if they enter on April 16th? They go to classes at Marshall for a week or whatever, or, enroll, do whatever, and then a week later they're like, "Well, I'm a Marshall student, and I'm back out."
Well, in the NCAA just this week, they also ratified that you can basically transfer as many times as you want as long as you're academically eligible at the institution you're transferring to.
Yeah, like we talked about last week, it's a losing battle. I don't know.
It's
why
like laundering money, basically, but just for players.
Yeah.
There'd be an easy way to just completely do away with all this, but that's a different conversation. Just making these guys employees, and everybody would be getting the money that they wanted.
Well, I think it's coming. I mean, I don't see any other way around. I mean, like, I saw the deal where the governor signed a new bill today saying that schools can pay players when that's allowed by the NCAA. But it's funny to me because these schools just go to the politicians and say, this is what we want you to do, because in that bill it also says students are not employees of a university, which we all know that's coming. That's like, and I think that was old legislation that was being held up by some political stuff. So a lot of things have changed since that bill was put in there. So I get it. I mean, it's just got some old bleep, and it just shows you how fast this stuff moves. But I mean, we're all just waiting for these court cases to play out. Is what we're doing.
And it's coming, because I saw, and I can't remember what school it was, but I saw something today where some school had started to cut some administrative staff, because that's what's going to happen. Like, you're going to see all these, assistant GM, assistant, like, that stuff's going to, and I don't mean within the football program, because they're not going to mess with where the bread's buttered, but like people within the athletic department, those people are going to go away to clear money for the second that schools can start paying these NIL bills.
It was A&M, Josh. I sent that to the war room. In fact, one of our good buddies, Tyler Pigg, he used to work at Oklahoma, got caught up in it.
Really?
Yeah.
He's the man. That sucks.
It's awful.
Dang.
Well, sorry to Tyler if he's listening.
I think they let go 12 people from the athletic department.
You should bring him back. He's
a really good guy. Did a really good job, too. I think he did women's basketball, maybe.
Yeah, he did women's
football.
Basketball. Yep.
Really good guy. Sucks.
Unfortunately, I think sports information is one of those departments that's going to get kind of morphed into something else. Eventually.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about it before, just in terms of kind of what we see on the day-to-day, in terms of just how not necessarily different their job is these days, but it is different in a way.
Yeah. It's more like, it's like every business. It's like the media, as we know it, it's all changing, just like we are. So, but that's the thing, when players are employees, it's going to be interesting exactly how you manage that. It's just going to look completely different from the inside to the outside.
Are players going to start building like their own parking garages that only players can park in because they have the money, like the means to do it? Like we parked in over at what was it, Houston Episcopal, Josh?
Yeah, God, that's still the nice. That's
wait,
the nicest
hold on.
parking garage
Houston
I've ever been
Episcopal
in
has like a
campus.
garage just for
not just for
students,
athletes, but for students. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it was an unbelievable collection of cars that were in there. An unbelievable.
And Terry, it was so nice. My truck, that big F-250 I used to have, fit in there with like not a problem. Like it was the nicest parking garage I've ever been in.
I will say that game that we went to, it was the night before the OU Houston game. back in 2016. It kind of underrated, had maybe some of the best players that we've seen just in one setting before, because it was, what's his name? The big left tackle that went to Stanford.
Yeah, Walker Little. Went to Stanford and is now, I think, with the Dolphins.
Yeah. And then, what's his name? The wide receiver for Alabama.
Jalen Waddle.
Jalen Waddle. Thank you, Bob.
I mean, Marvin Wilson was the star, and he was the guy that everybody knew at that point. Now those two far surpassed him as far as the way they produced. And, on Brenham, they had the kid that was an OU commitment at the time. No, they didn't play Brenham that night. I'm mixing up my Episcopal Knights.
They killed whoever they played, I think.
It was some other small private school. That's right.
Jalen Waddle was so damn good.
Jalen Waddle in a private school setting. It was that speed was comical.
I mean, not to just compare the two, but it was very much like watching Sterling Shepard at Heritage Hall back in the day when he would just dominate the game. And I think that, first game of Sterling's career, he returned a kickoff for a touchdown. I'm pretty sure, if I remember correctly, Jalen Waddle returned a punt in that game for a touchdown.
And wait, Episcopal, I think, had 2 or 3 other D1 signees on that team. Just crazy talent for a program that was, like I said, a small parking garage that probably in itself is not much bigger than 2 normal size houses as far as its, area. And that's enough to, house their student body, and like half the male students in the school are Division I athletes.
We're going to have to start referring to Sterling Shepard as Richard Shepard. He's like raising on his IG. I see he's raising the next Venus and Serena.
Oh, is he really?
He's got his little girls out there playing tennis all the time. They're so tiny, too.
I love it.
Like, the racket's bigger than his youngest is, pretty much, I think.
He hasn't officially announced retirement yet,
no,
has he?
No.
Okay.
I mean, I still see, Giants fans tweeting at him,
Well, it's crazy, and I think we talked about it last year during the football season. He was the most tenured Giant on the football team. He's kind of a little bit of a, I don't know if legend would be the right word. I don't know if Giants fans would say that, but he's a little bit of a all-time Giants guy. It's crazy.
I mean, he hasn't been with anybody else, so yeah.
No, he's been there since he got drafted.
All right, okay, George, let's go back to the portal. I mean, there's some stuff out there at Jacksonville State, but what else is kind of floating around? I know we've talked about it. You've talked about it. There's just not any offensive tackles out there that they're interested in right now. But we talked about kind of what if you could put some pressure on Damonic Williams. You've got the Michigan State stuff. Let's just kind of go over what is left for Oklahoma in the portal as it stands right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously defensive line, and like I said, I think they're going to get one. It's just a matter of who it might be. And again, the portal doesn't close till April 30th, so you still have some time for guys to maybe pop in here, in the next few days. So defensive line, I think, is top priority. I get the sense that offensive tackle is just not really something they're super interested in unless it's somebody that they really, really like. And I think that's partially because they kind of like what they saw from Jake Taylor to end, the spring season. And then I think it was also because you look at the portal, there's just not a lot of guys in there. Chris Hardy from Jacksonville State, the guy you mentioned, OU has been in contact with him. He's a defensive end type guy, very productive at Jacksonville State. Not sure if he would be a scholarship guy or maybe a preferred walk-on NIL type scholarship player. He's not in the same category as Simeon Barrow and Derek Harmon. Sorry, getting these mixed up. And then Damonic Williams. Those guys are true defensive tackles. Mm-hmm. This guy's an edge. So again, maybe you would add him to that room. OU has been in contact. Sounds like maybe they might set up a visit. And then the one other spot that you might pay attention to kind of falls in the same area as offensive tackle is corner. I would not be shocked if they saw the right corner in the portal that they might go after him, just because that's a position where you've got a lot of talent, but you've got a lot of guys that have also been either injured or moving positions where, Gentry Williams hasn't been able to stay healthy. Woody Washington's kind of moving positions. You like Des Malone, you like Kenai Walker, but if you can find a guy with some experience and talent, I wouldn't be shocked if they went after somebody there.
And it probably depends, it's kind of interesting that you talk about quarterback. That would be a position of need or that they would be interested in. When Brent sat up there on Saturday after the spring game and was raving about the depth that they had built. at cornerback. But again, you look up last year and you were having to move guys from safety to play cornerback because of injury. It is also, I think, we still expect names to enter from Oklahoma side of things.
Yes.
Those exit meetings have wrapped up. It will just be interesting. And, again, I don't expect any quote-unquote big names or even guys that you could see as a contributor next year. I think like Justin Harrington would be on top of that contributor list that has already entered or going to enter. But it will be interesting to see kind of who some of those names are that, obviously we were talking about it before we started, that are going to want to get onto the field. Maybe they're running out of eligibility, like a Shane Whiter, over the last couple weeks.
And I think right now I've been told that they're around +3 over the scholarship limit. So they're going to have to get, that down. And then that's not even counting if they were to add, another guy on the defensive line or another guy at offensive line or something like that. So you're going to see some guys enter the portal here, I think, over the next few days. Like Eddie said, they've had those meetings and now these coaches are out on the recruiting trail. So don't be surprised if some guys, jump in here, especially, corner. Wouldn't shock me. Like maybe that's why they're interested in corners, because they know they might lose a guy there. Linebackers, another spot where you've got just so many guys that you wonder if someone jumps in there. Receiver, all those positions we've talked about. But that's kind of the next step, is not only going after some of these guys in the portal, but also they're going to have to lose some guys too.
What's crazy is you still have and I'm not saying these are teams that are going to have a bunch of known players out there, a bunch of players in the portal that everybody's going to want, but you notice how many schools are still having their spring game this weekend?
Not really.
A lot
No.
of Big Ten schools.
Oregon's
Are there?
one. UCLA. Oh, well, Oklahoma State doesn't have one. Arizona. Did they maybe have somebody that could get out there?
I would imagine if they did, those guys would have already entered.
Yeah, Arizona
after-
guys, they probably would have been like,
After
I'm getting
Jed Fish left. But maybe you look up and you go, I don't really like what this new guy has to offer.
Well, and that's what you're seeing at Michigan State. I mean,
Yeah.
Michigan State, they brought in a new coach, and they don't even have a defensive line left over there. So I think that's why I'm saying
Nebraska, West Virginia.
you could see a lot of these
TCU.
guys after this weekend go in. So
Kind of seems like all the SEC
Colorado's
schools
this
went
weekend.
really early. Like they were the week before OUs and then OUs, and then here getting through this week will be the kind of the finality of what is spring football for a lot of people. I guess the Midwest has to start a little bit later, just to probably weather-wise, even though it's just a week.
Washington's not until next Friday. And that's
So
actually
weird.
on the Pac-12 network.
Washington's
Surprised that thing
is?
is even going, yeah.
Is it? Is the Pac-12 network still running?
I don't know. I need to cancel that subscription, though.
Surely they'll just, I don't know. Cox just continue to make you pay
Charge
for
you.
something that isn't even working.
Yeah, I liked my TV last night, 2 a.m. All right, so Portal will continue to be watched. Like I said, a lot of spring games still to be played, so you might still see some name come in there. The offensive tackle position, but probably not. I can't really think of those teams having a coveted guy, but I don't know their rosters all that well either. So, outside of that, we've got some recruiting stuff we're going to get to. I was shocked at the number, like over 100 recruits at the red and white game. I mean, that's just, and I'm sure a lot of that just, hey, why don't you guys come down? And they gave, kids invites that weren't necessarily, guys they were going to offer, sure they're going to offer, but that's a lot of, it's a good thing the recruiting staff is bigger now, I guess.
Yeah, that's the only way you could cope with that. And that's been, we talk about the ways that Brent Venables has changed. That's an interesting one because early on they were, 15, 20 guys. They didn't really do the massive weekends. Even that spring game a couple years ago, I think they did, but I don't know that it was really the plan. I think that whole thing just mushroomed so big and, with obviously the huge fan turnout and all of those things, I think there was a little more at play in general there. But it was a huge weekend. I think I've confirmed, they say 100, you never know. I mean, I think I've confirmed something like 60. And if you add in, okay, this guy came with this guy, but he's not really a guy, you could probably get to 80 pretty easy. But it was a good list. Obviously, like we've talked about already, picked up a big time commitment. And if I have to hear one more person act like there's no reason to be enthusiastic because a guy's so young, I'm just going to lose my shit. Like, everybody wants commitments. You want commitments from premier guys. Zane Rowe is very likely to be a top 5 player in the state of Texas in his class. There is no earth where that's bad. There's no universe where this is a bad thing for Oklahoma. It's nothing but good. Even if you don't keep him, it's good. It's some momentum. You need momentum at all times, and it's just, I don't understand it.
Yeah, when that kid
can't
plays,
wrap my head around that kind of thinking.
When that kid starts playing his junior year, all over the state of Texas, when parents, when other players see that kid and he's dominating football games, he's going to be known as, Zane Rowe Oklahoma commitment throughout his junior year.
Yep.
I mean, it's almost like advertising.
And he does. He plays for Geyer. Like, there's a very real world where Geyer is,
on national
playing
television.
in Jerry World next year. Yeah, and they're playing a game, and you're saying there's Oklahoma commitment Kevin Sperry, and there's Oklahoma commitment Zane Rowe. Like, that's just free pub for your program.
Not to mention that you got a quarterback that's going to start that's a Denton Geyer graduate. You got a safety that's going to start that's a Denton Geyer graduate.
Yeah,
and a
that's
little
a good
brother
point.
that's made some waves throughout the spring, and Eli Bowen that is a Denton Geyer graduate.
Yep. But, some people, I just like, I get that you're like, okay, like it's early. I understand. Things can change. The idea that a kid's going to go 3 years and not take a visit to anywhere but Oklahoma, that does seem unlikely to me too. But you can look at the good and worry about the bad when it comes. Like, it doesn't always have to be, well, what about that gray cloud?
I think the best advice, Josh, is just stay out of the YouTube comments for that kind of stuff.
Oh, it's on the corner. I can't lie. I love the YouTube comments. I read a fair amount of them. And I will make the promise to all those people that comment and all that stuff. And Sloppy Steaks, that guy's a genius. I will read his every single time. Hilarious commenter on YouTube. But if you hit like, I promise to keep reading your YouTube comments. Like, subscribe, do all the stuff we need. We've hit 15K, so excited about that movement.
Yeah, I should have mentioned that. We are past 15,000. And look, we're going to get back to some stuff with Josh, but first, George and I want to tell you guys about Factor, a pre-prep meal service that we have both been taking part of. And I've been doing the Calorie Smart version. You can pick Protein Plus, the Keto, the Vegan and Veggie, the Chef's Choice. You can also get snacks and desserts, shakes and smoothies. But look, Factor is a delicious, ready-to-eat meal that makes it very easy to eat every single day. It's just pre-prepared, chef-crafted, dietitian-approved meals, and it's delivered right to your door. You have over 35 different options a week to choose from, including the Keto, as I said, Calorie Smart, Vegan, Veggie Plus, Chef's Choice, all of that stuff. 2-minute meals, fuel up fast. It's the restaurant quality, and it is like, I'll tell you what. Here's the best way I can explain it to you. Just the chicken breast, mashed potatoes, and green beans. A pre-prepared meal just sitting in my freezer. Put it in the oven. Like, that was some of the best chicken breast I've ever had.
It's very good, and it's very good, too, if you're, like, trying to watch, like you said, calorie counting and stuff like that. I know that the keto stuff has been really good, and I'm trying to slim down for the summer a little bit. So tracking calories, this makes it super easy. And then also when you have, long days at work or whatever, you can go home and heat it up, or you could take it with you to work if you have a microwave at your office or something. So it's been super helpful for me to kind of track what I'm eating every single day. And it's good. Like, if it was shit, then it wouldn't be worth it.
It's really good.
It's really good.
All right. Well, here's what you do. You head to factormeals.com/Sooners50. That's factormeals.com/Sooners50. Use the promo code Sooners50. You'll get half off. That's 50%. Code Sooners50 at factormeals.com/Sooners50 and get your 50% off your first order. George and I wouldn't steer you wrong, so go check it out. All right. Back to Josh and some things, and let's bring Bob in here because I know he's going to have to run here, and we can get to a couple of things. Softball, if you will. Bob, I think
basketball
is only
portal.
Oh,
What
yeah,
a
that's what's
disaster.
going to take all this
It's a
time.
disaster.
Let's face it.
It's a disaster. It's an abject failure. And I say that not even joking. It's been an abject failure of epic proportion. And for the first time, I think that I'm very close to thinking this isn't just, it's just not going to work.
With the Porter Moser.
Right.
Well, and Bob joins us now, and I mean, you're very close to the situation. I know you're not coming in here and saying that people need to be fired, but it is not baffling, but it is about as low as you can get really right now as a program.
It is, just especially coming off a season where you went 20-12 and, you were a fluke away from being in the tournament, but I think they just need to reevaluate how they've attacked the portal. I think they were so we want to bring these in-state kids home, Kevin Overton and Sean Padula, Brandon Garrison, that they almost, I'm not going to say they stopped recruiting other guys, but they were like, we want to bring you home. We want this to happen, and we'll do what it takes to try to make it happen. And they had these certain numbers in their head that they were willing to go, and now these other programs are just blowing it up. There's been certain schools that weren't a factor before, and this portal cycle, all of a sudden, now they are. Xavier, Ole Miss, teams that they weren't offering the big numbers, and now they're doing it left and right. And I think OU fought so hard to get back on an even footing, but it's last year's even footing, and so they're still playing from behind. And I think what they're going to have to really learn to do is just be a lot more aggressive. You got another week for the portal to be open, and instead of saying, we really want you to come, bring in 3 or 4 and make it like, hey, we got to know. We can't just put all our eggs in this one basket.
Not knowing everything and what's gone wrong, just hearing you explain that, it does make me kind of think okay, we know with football, and I'm thinking of Kareem Abdul-Jabbar here, because it was never really any drama around him. It seemed like he was locked in to go to St. Louis from the moment, even before he left Indiana
I was literally
State.
Thinking Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, and I was like, where the
Kareem Abdul-Jabbar.
going?
What's his name, Eddie?
Robbie Avila.
Robbie Avila. Anyway, but and it seems like with Porter and with OU, it has almost been we're going to wait till they get in the portal, then we're going to approach and we're going to see what happens. When everybody else, I don't care if you call it tampering or not.
Right.
They're setting themselves up to be in position to land these guys when they hit the portal. I think that's and maybe that has happened. I don't know. It's my hypothesis here. It's my guesstimation that maybe they have to work on that part of it.
They do, and I think they thought they probably had a couple with Overton and Padula of in-state kids coming back home, and I think they were maybe banking on that allure being bigger than whatever, the money, the value that was going to be offered. Maybe we're not going to offer as much as Texas Tech to Overton, but he wants to come back home, so it's going to be okay. Maybe Padula, he wasn't recruited by the Lon Kruger staff, so it's not like he's got anything against us. So we'll offer him a number, and he'll come back home. And then when you start playing the game, and the other schools are offering more and more, then you start looking at what you have as your actual budget. You're like, if I do this, I'm mortgaging this, and I can't bring in this guy, and I don't know where I'm going to get my starting center. And it just becomes a big, business evaluation across the board between the player and between the program.
Here's the problem with that, ideology, that if that's what they were doing, it's even if the money was about similar, why in the hell would you sign up to play at Oklahoma when these other programs have a little bit better track record here over the last 3 years? I think that it's like what I asked you this morning, Bob. Is there a problem with the head coach, the style of play, that even if it were tight, you would look at what Oklahoma and the lack of the NCAA tournament, the lack of success,
development.
What would push a guy to come to Oklahoma right now, other than, well, I was born in that state, I'd like to play for Oklahoma,
But you could say that about some of the other schools too.
Sure.
I mean, that's where.
But that's when the money is different. Like at Tech, if the money was different for, say, Kevin Overton, that's where maybe the money is a deciding factor in the grand scheme of things, and that's where OU's kind of effed right now.
Because if Padula goes to Ole Miss, what have the Rebels shown And you don't know if Beard's going to be there. Is he just going to bolt? Like,
Sure.
You're going to have that question no matter where you go. It sounds like, they've gone into these visits and it feels like OU's had its number that they're willing to try to commit toward a kid. And sometimes it's been agreed upon, sometimes it hasn't. But then something changes. And, we can go about Aaron Scott, Liz Scott brother picking St. John's instead of the Sooners earlier this morning. I mean, OU felt like they were in the best spot possible, that all the T's have been crossed, the I's have been dotted.
And you knew he was committed and ready to announce for OU today.
Yes.
On Sunday.
And then St. John's came back, and I don't know the amounts for OU or St. John's. I just know whatever happened Tuesday night, OU made an internal decision like, okay, we're going to have to let them walk. We can't afford to get to that number. And so that's the difference between covering the basketball portal compared to football and softball, where it just feels like if they want them, they got them.
Well, and here's the thing for me, too, and it goes back to what we've talked about. We've been critical of the administration here, and you throw Joe C in that. But donors aren't used to ponying up for anything basketball related. Like, it's just become a culture. Like, basketball is on the back burner. Like, if we're good, we're good. But we're not going to spend a whole bunch of money to become good. Like, we just want to organically become good. And so then you get to NIL, and you have no donor base that's like, we're invested in hoops. We're invested in basketball. Yep. We want to see it do well. We want to pay the money that needs to be paid to sign some of these players. Like, you've allowed that culture to creep into your athletic department over the last 25 years.
I think that's fair, and I think that the NIL stuff certainly is playing a part, but there's this sneaking suspicion that I have that the NIL is becoming a little bit of a crux or like a scapegoat in all of this. Like,
I mean, it's bad, though. I mean, yeah, you can't say it's just one thing.
Oh, yeah. It's a lot to miss out on this many guys and this many guys with connections back into the state, but at the same time, I don't know. It's like at the end of the day, maybe it's just they're trying to sell kind of a shitty basketball program right now. And that's what it feels like.
I'll leave on this positive note. I'll try to be positive.
There aren't any.
Okay.
Stop lying to us.
The portal closes, we go into May 1st. And now we know that grad transfers have to be in by May 1st, too. It's not you can just decide in June.
Basically a week from today.
Yeah, we have a week. So because you have 4 spots open, as all these big names that start to enter, and there's been a couple like R.J. Jones from Kansas State this morning, on Yenso from Kentucky yesterday, some of these schools that they'll be looking at are going to be full.
Yeah.
And you've got 4 spots open. And so you're going to fall backwards into landing potentially some really good guys.
Like they did last year,
with
right?
Jalen Moore. You didn't want, like, if kids take a long time to make their portal decision, then they're limiting their options, and you have options because you might have 4 remaining scholarships. Then you might have a bigger NIL budget than you thought because you missed out on some of those Plan A targets initially. Now you've got that money, and this kid doesn't have a lot of options, and then you converge at just the right time.
This was more like therapy for Bob Przybyllo. I mean, he's been sitting here watching the football portal.
George will chime in with like great news all the time on the football side.
These 3 guys are definitely like interested in Bob is over there like, well, they had one guy, but
the text and the DMs of the last week and a half, it's been soul crushing.
It feels real with the football players, and with the basketball stuff, it's just like, well, I mean, I'm gonna have to
believe
see
it when you see it.
Yeah.
And I think that becomes the part is that you feel these visits are going really, really well, and you think you've got it locked down, but until that announcement is made, you're just learning. Everything's still up for grabs.
Let's face it, basketball as a sport, it's always been full of mercenaries. People are taught to be mercenaries from the moment they get into AAU. And it's just going to the highest bidder is not a big deal. In like relationships and all that stuff, they have relationships with everybody. When it comes down to it, how much am I getting out of this team?
And 1 or 2 players can make or break a team.
Right.
And that's why some of these guys will start saying, well, I'm that type of player. I'm an elite player that deserves that $1.5 million, and I'm not going to go for anything less. And if we don't believe the market value is that, but if there's one team that's willing to pay it, then the market value says it.
Can you imagine, like, if we were already at the point where the Trae Young, can't remember, Family Center or something. What is it?
Yeah. Family.
If that becomes the
Athletic Center.
AAU hub that Trey like is hoping it will become, can you imagine just like sad Porter standing out there looking at all the players he's never going to get? Like, there goes the guy.
But he could go to every AAU tournament.
Yeah.
You'd have a better chance. I know that was, not the top priority, but that was something that was in consideration. Hey, we can bring a lot of tournaments to Norman and get OU involved. And we already have Buddy Buckets and Team Griffin and Team Trey Young. They've got a lot of connections. They just need to start actually building on them.
Well, Blake's retired.
Depressing.
Maybe he's got some extra time to help out. I'm thinking he has better things to do. All right, thanks, Bob. Stickball, we'll get that figured out. Hopefully get you an episode tomorrow on that if we can. But we'll bring George back in here to kind of wrap things up.
I will say, I know that I don't know if he's done any I don't know if he's put anything out on it, but it does sound like Jenny Baranczyk might be in on somebody that is deciding between OU and UConn, which is just incredible. The Reagan Beers girl out of Oregon State took a visit to Norman over what was it, last weekend, basically?
It was for the spring game.
Okay.
She was in town for the spring game, and it sounds like she's down to OU and UConn, which when you're talking about the ability to recruit, if Jenny Baranczyk is able to land this girl, talk about a game changer. They go from a team that, I think you look at the roster now, the girls, every key player that was on last year's team is back next year. Add Liz Scott, who's hurt, and then if you add this girl, you're talking about like Sweet 16, Elite 8 potential.
And her brothers have two of the greatest names in college athletics.
Yeah.
You're a big fan.
Rowdy and Rocky Beers. Unbelievable. They're both tight ends at Florida International.
That might. I said this the other day. That might be OU's only hope, is that they get on this women's basketball train, and that gets a donor base like wanting to build a new arena. Like, find you a Caitlin Clark, and maybe Lloyd Noble can be rebuilt, or at least burnt down.
We'll let people believe that. I don't know if there's another like Caitlin Clark out there.
You're probably right, but dare to dream, Eddie. Dare to dream. Okay, anything else? We didn't really get into the specifics of recruiting. I know we got the recruiting report, for you to kind of parse that stuff out on YouTube.
Let's go here. Josh, just in terms of some of the guys that were in town last weekend, OU coaches are already out on the recruiting trail.
Big Houston trip yesterday.
Did it stick out to you that Cortland Guillory was one? Was that more of because it's a regional location, or does that tell you anything, I guess is what I'm asking?
Do you mean that he was
that they immediately went and saw him as well as Kobe Sellers yesterday down in the Houston area?
I think it's very interesting, and I wrote about it in Woke. Like, the cornerback situation to me is the most interesting thing going right now in Oklahoma's recruiting. Like, just following guys. There's a case to be made that the next guy to commit out of Tristan Haynes, Cortland Guillory, and Kobe Sellers is the end of cornerback recruiting in 2025. Now, based on the way they're operating and they're chasing all three of those guys pretty doggedly, I don't think that's the case. I think it's 2 out of 3. And, with Guillory, I am one of several that have put in predictions for him in Oklahoma now. I think that visit went really well. There was a time when it kind of looked like maybe Texas was going to be the call, but I think he's going to end up at Oklahoma. So then it comes down to Sellers and Tristan Haynes. Haynes talked about it. I thought that was one of the better answers I got all weekend, was him talking about being aware of all the corners that OU is recruiting. He said, I know Malik, I know Kobe. He didn't mention Cortland by name, but they were there the same weekend. I'm sure they were in each other's presence. So I do. I think it's really telling, and I think it again goes back, and this isn't to toot our horn, but like, we've been talking about Houston on the recruiting report and here for months and how big it was going to be, and they've already got Torrey Blaylock. They're in good shape with Max Granville, who they went and saw. They're in good shape with Smith Arogbo, who they went and saw. And ended last night, Eddie. I'm wondering if Skip Johnson got a baseball eval from Brandon Hall and company that were at his baseball game, Jonah Williams' baseball game last night. So
I don't know.
I thought they did a great job.
I don't know for a fact, but I know that Todd Butler was out recruiting last night because he wasn't at the OU baseball game. I almost wonder if it was a tag team down in Houston. I'll check into that today.
That's interesting. It would make total sense.
I mean, I assume you can do that.
I don't know why you couldn't.
Right.
And it's interesting because I know there's the rule, and we've talked about it, where a program can only go one time during the spring evaluation period. Now, obviously, baseball has a little different calendar and that kind of thing, but I don't know if that would apply to the baseball program as well. So they were kind of like, Skip, we're going to be down there. If you want to send somebody, this is our day.
Sure.
By the way,
that would be interesting. I don't know the answer to that.
One thing I wanted to bring up is because you're talking about, maybe one more and the cornerback position is done, but I got to say, I think there's still a lot of question marks about that position on the roster now moving forward. I mean, we know that there's talented guys, but is Jacoby Johnson going to be a guy? Is Makari Vickers going to be a guy? Is just go down the list. I mean, Josiah Wagner, is he going to be a guy? Like, nobody, I mean, they're still trying to bring in corners, right? Or they would like to have another corner. Georgia said that. It tells me that they know they don't have the next guy up. I just think that is one of those positions. We all know it's so hard to build depth at the cornerback position of guys that can come in if your frontline starter gets hurt.
That's why it would be really interesting.
I think they have to kind of maybe you over recruit a little bit right now with so many question marks about if you have the next pair already on campus.
I would venture to guess, and George, you'd probably be able to tell me better, but I would think if you are targeting a cornerback in this current spring cycle, it's going to be somebody that brings experience. It's going to be somebody like, the guys that they've already brought in, whether it be Branson Hickman or Jermaine Lowell. How do you say it? Lole. I would imagine, though, that they're targeting a experienced player rather than somebody that would be seen as maybe they're bringing in to cover up a Jacoby Johnson or a Makari Vickers, because by all reports, it seems like those guys had pretty positive springs. Maybe they're just a year away.
Yeah,
Lole.
I think so. I think you're right, Eddie. It's somebody that's played some high level football, and I know that there's been the stuff out there about Cormani McCall from Colorado. I think he's just an interesting case because there's a lot of talent there. Obviously, with the way that he came out of high school, you believe in the talent there, and he did get to play a little bit last year at Colorado. So, but I feel like that's maybe fizzled in terms of interest there on both sides. So I don't think they'll be super interested. I think it'd be more of a situation of somebody like you said, Eddie, like Des Malone, really.
Exactly.
That has some experience and talent and fits kind of what they're looking for body shape wise.
Yeah, and McLean, I mean, Dylan Edwards is out there too, but that's another guy that doesn't seem like OU has shown much interest in at this point.
No, and it seems like I don't know.
K-State probably is.
It seems like Kansas State would be the most comfortable landing spot, but I don't really know just with how he operated throughout the high school recruitment what he's looking for in a school. I'm kind of surprised that I'm surprised there's so many people leaving Colorado, but I'm also kind of quietly celebrating and not really surprised because that's starting to go about how I thought it was going to.
You think it's more that it's just when your coach is like the star and he's also trying to
it's everybody else's
disciplinary
fault. It's never going to be somebody from the Sanders family's fault that Colorado, if it inevitably doesn't work, it won't be their fault. It will be somebody else's. And I think that's kind of the picture that's been painted up there.
But the whole message of, it's
you
real.
can hear the kids today thing coming. Like, the kids today just wouldn't buy into what we're doing. That's on you.
And that's and maybe it coincides with Shadir going pro, and all of a sudden you're looking at. I wouldn't be surprised at all when Shadir graduates if all of a sudden, Dion kind of wants to go to the pro ranks. He wants to coach in the NFL. That's coming.
When he leaves, that roster will just be a flaming husk,
and they will have not recruited high school for what 4 years, Josh, or however many more.
They make sure to land like 1 5-star a year, and then that's really all they're concerned with.
And then they
got the big offensive tackle last year.
Colorado's a mess.
Yeah,
I don't.
But it in a way, and I guess you got to see how it turns out. But I think there was a lot of people saying it was going to go like this.
Yeah, but
to me, and I think for me, I thought it was one or the other. It was going to go really well.
Sure.
And he would use his stardom and his power to be this incredible recruiter, and he was going to connect with moms and dads, and they were just going to love the chance to play with Dion. Or it would go like this, and it's disorganized, and he's got people more worried about how they're packaging he's got the guy that's the Denver Buffs or whatever, that basically it's his propaganda machine. That's like, oh yeah, Dylan Edwards just didn't want to compete. What? Like, what are we talking about? Let's stop. Like that. It's just, and a kid that he's known since middle school, and they're just going to try to bag him like that. You're like, dude, okay, I see what you are. Not that I think most of us saw what he was before.
Yeah.
Well, McLean wasn't exactly silent when he left. He kind of swiped back at
100%.
Dion.
100%.
Funny enough, I think USC's in that race.
That's just perfect
for him.
Cormani McLean.
Yep.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I don't know why I kept saying McCall.
Because
it's McLean.
If Deion Sanders can't reach a young corner, Lincoln Riley can. that makes sense.
It's a mess, man. The transfer portal stuff. There's just a lot going on.
It is, but I'll say this: like coming out of spring, I feel like OU has managed it really well. When you look at that roster, and we got to go out there to so many practices and see how it was built. Yeah. I mean, I think it's built really well. And like, I can't remember if it was Jordan Evans when he was in here yesterday. He was talking about just being there at the spring game and looking around at that defense and saying, I saw dudes. Like, I saw dudes on top of dudes. Like, and I didn't recognize that when I was at Oklahoma, which they didn't have.
And a lot of it, too, as good as Oklahoma has hit on guys in the portal, a lot of it has to do with high school recruiting and the guys that they're bringing in. And when you look at the the linebacker position, I think that is a perfect example of what they want that thing to look like. They want to be able to stack bodies. When you look at safety, Jaden Hardy, Michael Boganowski quietly might have had one of the best springs, and I'm definitely being pretty dramatic about it, but it seems like he had one of the better springs that any freshman I can remember, just in terms of what he did on the field on top of the way that other guys talk about him.
I also think, too, this goes back to some portal stuff and also recruiting, too, but hearing the last week or so, I've been talking to a lot of agents and people that have worked both in the NFL and now are doing a lot of NIL stuff. And we always hear from OU side out, we're doing it the right way. This is the smart way to do it and all this stuff. Man, hearing from some of the people that have worked with NFL organizations and a lot of different players, it's a very smooth operation that they're running right now. They're very direct. They're very upfront with guys, what they think they're worth. All of those things, how they write up contracts, all of that stuff seems like they, over the last year especially, have grown in that area a lot, and that's helped them a ton when it comes to recruiting players, getting their families on the same page, and being smart about who they're taking, not only in their recruiting classes, but also in the transfer portal. I think that side of it, like, they are very organized, I would say is the right way to do it, right way to say it.
Well, and I think all the things that we heard from Williams and his family seemed like, yes, they have their shit together. Like they are doing things the right way. We're comfortable with the way they do things.
George, I know that we've talked about this privately, but it seems like just in terms of Damonic Williams, and not to just rehash everything, but just from a timeline perspective, it's good news if he takes all the visits.
Yes.
It's good news if he doesn't commit to Texas after the Texas visit. Obviously, the Baton Rouge visit obviously is going to be important here at the end of the week. Like, if you can get to Saturday or Sunday without him committing, all of a sudden, for me, it kind of slides back into, okay, maybe for a lack of better terms, maybe these people aren't full of shit and they really are trying to go through an actual process that is, in a way, a little bit, abnormal for the transfer portal additions.
Yeah, I think so. If he goes through all these visits and he hasn't made a decision, and you hear, he's going to go back home and evaluate his options, that's probably pretty good news for Oklahoma. Again, we'll see. I mean, one of these schools could really impress him, and not to say OU didn't, but, you just never know with these guys. And I'm not going to sit here and get anybody's hopes up, because this is just a case of there's a lot going on. And I think that's the best way to put it. So I wouldn't, if you're an OU fan and you really want Damonic Williams, I'm not saying there's no hope, but I'm also saying don't also sit there and plan on him being a part of this moving forward. Like I think it's a 50-50 deal right now.
It's catching up with this Alabama news.
I keep forgetting SEC school. Can't recruit him. Yeah. I keep forgetting.
Yeah, well, I mean, just why do this to us, Pete? Pete Nakos. Anyway, what we're looking at is
James Brockermeyer.
James Brockermeyer from Alabama's in the portal.
I always get him and the brother mixed up.
Of course, maybe OU is tampered correctly, and he's transferring to.
Yeah, he has to go to
transferring to Iowa or something for 5 minutes. Well, Iowa's going to be Iowa's going to be a little gun shy about taking Alabama offensive line.
I wonder if that will become a thing where they're like, okay, you can enter the portal, like obviously tampering, enter the portal, go to Kansas, and then in about a week, give us a call.
Or what if it gets into like almost like player transactions? Like, okay, another school in the SEC convinces you to get out of the portal and go to, say, Oklahoma State. And then Texas pays Oklahoma State $100,000 for laundering that recruit to them.
I don't know.
I don't think schools would do that.
You don't often see mafias work together,
though.
but sometimes it does work. Sometimes you need a help from another gang.
George, I think it'd be brilliant for Oklahoma State to do that because then all of a sudden they've got NIL money to use.
Yeah.
They could get 4 players that are in their price range for that kind of dough.
I mean, we cracked this code
I agree.
in a podcast.
It would never happen, but it would be brilliant if somebody would swallow their pride enough to do it.
Just want to get to the day where we start swapping out walk-ons. It's like, yeah, he does pretty good on the scout team. Never cries.
I mean, we're gonna have what if we have a college football transaction report? You know,
I mean, I don't think that we're truly too far away from that. If you want to look at like a 20-year picture.
Oklahoma sends backup kicker to Arizona in exchange for starting offensive tackle and $200,000.
Probably will never happen because the NCAA and whatever that's going to turn into would never. I don't know if you swapping like student athletes would ever be a thing that could happen.
You said it earlier. I mean, we just need this to get to the employee model.
Yeah, it would be very
too
simple.
Many things that can go haywire, that unintended consequences.
Well, there's everything that is so new to college sports just in general and specifically college football. It's such a kind of a tested out wait and see period with probably the next 3 or 4 years and with changes that are sure to come with the ACC and Florida State and Clemson. Like, who knows if we're even talking about conferences in 5 years.
Yeah, the playoff.
Sure.
You know, all of that stuff. TV rights deals.
It's wild.
I'm just ready. I'm ready for the portal to be over.
At least close, so everything kind of settles down. So you don't have to keep on it.
I want it to just keep going, so we can keep selling subscriptions.
It's a good point. It's a good point, and I hope to have something up either today or tomorrow morning, just on some of these updated targets and what I'm hearing about maybe some of these guys visiting or not visiting.
Josh, was there anything? I know that we've hit on it a little bit in the recruiting report, or I think it was the portal report on Monday on YouTube. And Carrie and George, feel free to chime in. Just anything else to wrap up spring that we maybe didn't get to in the Eskridge Lexus postgame show or any of the YouTube shows. I feel like
after being able to rewatch it a little.
Yeah,
bit.
I feel like we've kind of exhausted everything from the spring game from actually on Saturday. But I don't know. It seems like this thing's in a good spot right now. It's just going to go back to kind of the 1, 2, 3 things that we've talked about, whether it be interior defensive lineman or the offensive lineman situation, which, did look better. It just seems like, there's a couple question marks going into the offseason, the actual offseason, that will need to be kind of answered here before they get into, the actuality of the season in August and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, for me, I think it's just I still marvel at the depth of the roster. Like, there's just so much more there at number 60 on the roster, number 70 on the there are quality guys. You guys talking about Boganowski, talking about Jaden Hardy, like guys that you're like, wow, but that guy's young, but he's really good. And I mean, again, to me, this team is a B offensive tackle. I mean, it doesn't have to be an All-American, doesn't even have to be an All-Conference guy, just a solid. They could find another Walter Rouse. I could make a very real case this is a playoff team. Like, I believe that. I think they have that sort of ability to grow because they're just going to get nothing but better because they're so stinking young.
Yeah. It is, and I think we say this every year, but it is kind of crazy when you look up and you see whether it be, Boganowski or Hardy or even Ivan Carrion to a certain extent. And again, we say this every year, but they just look so physically much better than the previous freshman class. And I know that we've said this every year about the freshman classes, but I don't know. This one looks like it could be pretty special.
By the way, did you guys do any more research on Chad Smith?
No, but I think that we've
just
nailed
the
it.
stats.
I think he's a GA. He's been a GA the last couple of years at Clemson.
Okay.
I'm looking at his LinkedIn page right now.
Little backstory.
I thought we were talking chili peppers.
Danny Stutzman was talking about Chad Smith because they watch a lot of Clemson tape.
Well, they're getting into personalized jerseys. It came from the Jimmy Green Beans
so this
jersey
is like
that he wore.
Stutzman had the Jimmy Green Beans custom-made OU jersey. I think he said that Jaron Kanik has a Jay Valai, Wisconsin custom-made jersey. And this Chad Smith guy came up, and they said that they're trying to get a Chad Smith Clemson jersey because he's become kind of a legend within the OU football film room. And it has to be just because this guy is like I would
maniac.
imagine white guy that is just an absolute animal on the field for Clemson. It's kind of funny.
Said he was the MVP of their bowl game.
Yeah, I can't remember. Maybe it was the Russell Athletic Bowl. I really don't know because I think he was there during that time period.
But it was just fun. I mean, like, you don't see Stutzman light up that much as he did when he was talking about Chad
funny.
Smith. It was pretty funny.
For those at home, Chad Smith, I just looked at. I knew nothing about this, so I'm catching up. You guys know this, I'm sure. He has almost as many games played in his career at Clemson as he does tackles. That's just an amazing stat. 58 games played, 66 solo tackles. That's just a beautiful thing.
And I get the sense most of those tackles came on special teams.
Guaranteed. He didn't start until his senior year. I mean, he's exactly the kind of guy Brent would love.
Like you guys are talking about Boganowski and guys that have flashed, and that's one thing that I would say about Brent and the defense and what has made it different is, and you can start with like Kip Lewis. I mean, even better players. Like Brent has a way of finding guys that just know how to play football, that instinctively know how to be in the right place at the right time. And he's getting more and more of those. And I would say that about Boganowski. I know somebody was coming after me because I said Boganowski wasn't big. No, he's very tall. He's taller than almost everybody. He's freshman skinny. Like he's got a great frame. He's going to put a lot more better weight. And it's just like with Gentry Williams, RSJ, Robert Spears Jennings. Like both of those guys needed to be bigger, but they were physical and they went after people, but their bodies didn't hold up. And that's the thing with Boganowski. He's got to get bigger because he's a missile. He's going to go in and just lay the wood to people, but he's just got to get physically bigger. And that's all I was saying about that. By the way, some housekeeping stuff I want to get to real quick. I know a lot of people are starting to find our podcast that we've had, like the Unofficial 40s, I think it's almost 10 years old now. And we cuss. We've always cussed on this podcast. We don't do it as much on the YouTube shows, and I discourage it, except for when Dede Westbrook is on, or Kenny Stills. Dede Westbrook will probably forever have the F-bomb record on YouTube. But those things happen. We're not afraid of cussing. Like, we've always done it. I generally bleep out the F-bombs, and that's the only thing, unless it's Eddie's conspiracy theories about coaches' wives that make for good courtroom drama if we let it get that far.
And perhaps make a lot of sense.
So, like, just understand, we cuss on the Unofficial 40, and George cusses a lot on the post-game podcast sometimes if you lose to a Bedlam
have there
rival.
Been people that are complaining about cursing in the year 2024?
I know. We got to do this all the time. We come back to it. And look, have a discussion with your child. If you're going to listen to it in the car with him, sometimes people cuss.
Like the
sometimes
next time they
say
get to pick them up
words
because
that
they
are
got their
considered
ass
dirty.
beat at school.
So just understand, like, it's not every YouTube video that we do is not most likely not going to have cursing in it, but it's going to happen from time to time, and especially on the audio-only podcast that we've had. And this will eventually go to video, but I just wanted people to understand that are that are coming to us new from YouTube that didn't know anything about us. Just know that. So
say it, George.
I think it's a bunch of bullshit.
And you.
There you go.
But I say that lovingly.
You do.
Like
My
people
mom
don't
doesn't like when
understand
I
that.
cuss, so I try to refrain.
And that's why we're going to confession before we go to the Thunder game tonight.
You're going to the game tonight?
Well, I'm not going to the game, but downtown, just play along.
I'll be there.
He's cleansing himself. The good
I'll be at the
vibes.
game. Hopefully, I get on the kiss cam.
Are you going?
Robbed.
Oh boy. Are you still? Because you're going to be down there at Scissortail Park, and they're still doing the ticket giveaway. Are you going to still try and get some tickets tonight?
No, I already bought
Are
mine.
they doing that for every game? Ticket giveaway?
So far, I
Yeah,
mean, they're doing it tonight.
They're giving away, I think,
Yeah.
20 for each game, each home game.
I will say, too, the T-shirts tonight,
They're awesome.
kind of badass.
I didn't like game one a whole lot.
They were a
I
I don't
little.
think you can't complain about the shirt.
No.
But you can always praise it.
Yeah. I think it was okay, is how I would say it. But I think the ones tonight are awesome.
They're pretty cool.
Yeah. So I'm excited.
Will you
It'll be
take
fun.
them and just store them away, or will you wear it every once in a while? And
I
did
think
you know
the one
you
that
can
I get
exchange,
tonight, I will.
You can exchange the shirt for a different size too.
Yeah, but I'm about an XL, so they're perfect.
I heard there were
But-
T-shirt wars on Sunday night with like people trying to go around and get the T-shirt off the chair that wasn't
Which,
there.
if you're doing that,
wow.
you're an asshole. Like,
Oh, you're a terrorist.
like if you go to the game, you
You're a
deserve
full-fledged
yeah,
terrorist.
You,
You're a
you get a
domestic
T-shirt.
terrorist.
Yeah, and
You
it's-
should be kicked out if you get.
And if
found
you're
to be
doing that too, then you're taking away from the whole arena wearing the T-shirt. Like that's just if you do that, you're the worst. So
It's awful.
don't
We've
do
lost
that.
Josh.
Absolutely awful.
But I'm excited. It'll be fun tonight and
Big game.
huge. Game.
I think New Orleans is going to come out and kind of punch them in the face tonight.
I
We've seen
think
that-
think OKC's going to come out. I think OKC.
Well,
I think
They can-
I
they can
think what's
counter.
going to happen is they're going to try and run Valanciunas out of the game,
I hope so.
and they've done that before.
But the one that they need to do a better job on is Trey Murphy.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Shot
they do,
12
but
threes. They need
he
to
also,
keep him to under
I think
10.
he played out of his mind a little bit. As long as CJ McCollum, he seems to be in a little bit of a slump.
Well, he was really good the other night.
McCollum, I mean, he was good, but his box score was awful. He did not shoot the ball very well.
Yeah, he was their guy though
And
down the stretch.
Brandon Ingram was awful, 5 for 17.
Well,
Brandon
thank
Ingram,
Lou
yeah.
Dort for that.
Yeah,
was
he was
all over.
awesome.
Welcome to
And
the Dortcher chamber.
Even Kenrich Williams spent some time on Brandon Ingram, and he had no success.
But if Shea plays better, the Thunder will win. I mean,
If they're gonna shave the rotation, I'd say shave Gordon Hayward.
yes,
Yeah, and give
everyone
the-
else I felt
give
good
the
about.
minutes to Aaron
Everyone else
Aaron
that played
Wiggins was
good.
great.
Yeah.
It feels like tonight, though, and we saw it in Los Angeles last night with Dallas. We saw it with Indiana last night in Milwaukee. It just seems like some of these teams that got beat in game one, you're going to get their best effort in the first quarter. You just kind of got to buoy that and be able to get into the second, third quarters.
Should we hit up Royce Young, try and get him to come on?
Yeah.
Shout
He's
out
a huge OU fan.
Shout out Royce. He
Shout
helped
out
George.
Royce. He got me. So I won the tickets on Sunday at like 5:30ish, somewhere in there. And they're like, give us your phone number. We'll text you the tickets. Well, 2 hours go by. It's 7:30 and I have not received the
They
tickets.
wrote down the number wrong.
And they wrote the number down wrong. And I didn't know what to do. So I texted a bunch of people. I texted Royce, good friend of mine, and was like, hey, you probably don't know anybody, but could you see about why I haven't got my tickets? And he went and checked for me. Sure enough, they had the wrong phone number. He gave him my phone number, and that's how I got the tickets.
I'm glad you didn't take my advice because I was like, they'll send them to you.
I
Don't
know.
worry
That's what
about
everybody
it.
kept telling me. Everybody's like, you're just being anxious. I'm like, it was 3 hours ago that I won the tickets. But shout out Royce. He's the man.
All right, looking forward to it. I know you Oklahoma City boys are really enjoying what's going on downtown.
Awesome
right
scene.
now.
It's awesome seeing
It's awesome.
downtown.
It feels very nostalgic. Back to like 2012, 2013.
See, I
when
wasn't
they were
around for
really,
that.
really good and
But-
making that first run. It's very like I don't have to rehash it, but it's very similar.
It's so much fun. It's
it
nice.
still doesn't feel real in a way.
It's so much fun. It's it's like you can excuse George for being such a traitor to the city of Tulsa.
Hey, this is a team the whole state can take a part in. Okay,
Sure.
I do think it's cool though seeing the photos, and of course I wasn't here in 2012, but seeing the photos of like downtown Oklahoma City back in like 2012 to now.
Oh, that
like
maps picture?
Yeah, with
It's
the scissor
crazy.
tail,
That was
like-
even before 2012.
I mean, Scissortail is the perfect spot to have that kind of a thing. I wish they'd put up some sort of screen or something down there, I think you would fill up that place to watch.
Yeah,
the game.
I mean, they can put it on the stage.
I asked about that. I guess there has to be like an ordinance that is, I don't know, is it approved by the city council or something? Because
yeah, I mean,
the park technically closes at 11. I didn't know that. I guess there's like people that actually go around. Real quick before we get out of here, baseball's on its longest winning streak since 2017. They've won 8 games in a row, and they're playing extremely well.
Right?
Well, 2. They have 2 sweeps in a row, but they did come off of a sweep in Provo where it's their 4th sweep of the year, which has never happened in OU baseball history, to sweep 4 teams in a given season. And all of a sudden, you look up, they're 14-4 in conference play with 4 series left, 2 home, 2 away. This weekend is massive. It is a massive, massive weekend at Eldell Mitchell. They're expecting big crowds, so if you're looking for tickets or you want to get tickets to the Texas series this weekend, I would go ahead and do so. I wouldn't wait until Saturday because they might be sold out. But this is a team that's starting to play its best baseball of the season at the right time. And all of a sudden, you look back up in the Baseball America and the D1 baseball, NCAA projections, Oklahoma's solidly hosting right now. I've had a couple people ask me, like, what do they need to do to host? Win the Big 12 regular season would get you a host. It gets a little bit more interesting if you dip back and you lose a couple series coming in. You'll obviously still probably make the NCAA tournament. Their RPI is fantastic with the best strength of schedule in the country, or one of the best strength of schedule. So they're playing really good baseball right now, though. They're cut down on errors. Over the course of the 8-game winning streak, they've only had 4 errors and only 1 by a position player, and it was in the bottom of the 9th by Jackson Willits on Friday night in the opener in Provo. The other 3 errors have come from pitchers, oddly enough. So really good baseball, really fun team. They're scoring a lot of runs. Didn't score a lot of runs on Tuesday night in the 3-1 win over Wichita State, but that's all good right there.
And John Spikerman back?
John Spikerman back in the lineup on Tuesday night. Don't be concerned that he left in the 6th inning. That was kind of their plan, was to get him 3 innings last week, 5 innings Tuesday night, and I think they're going to try to get him 9 innings on Friday in the opener against Texas. Jackson Nicholas back in the lineup on Tuesday night. He didn't play second base, but he did DH, and I think that's a positive coming off of the hamstring issue. I would expect him to be back at second base Friday night. And what else? Oh, the other thing. So when Spikerman does come back, they have a decision to make. They probably want to keep Jason Walk in the lineup. He's had a hit in 15 of the last 17 games that he's played. For a freshman, he's going to be incredible. It's going to be interesting to see what they do, though. I think the best option would be move him to left. And unfortunately, you would have to sit Kendall Pettis, who's been a part of the program for a long time. I think they're a better team with Jason Walk in the lineup. So they're going to flip-flop that. I know that Skip has said that they're going to play it by year, just in terms of matchup, left, right, right, left. It'll be kind of interesting to see what they do there because Jason Walk can hit from both sides. And even in a situation where you added Kendall Pettis back into the left field in the late innings for defense, I think Walk has a better arm than Kendall Pettis. But there is, I think, something to be said for just how many games Kendall Pettis has played. He's not going to be outright benched. He's not like he's not going to see the field. So that's a positive there. Isaiah Lane as a freshman has been really good too. I think he has a hit in 7 of his last 10 games. But yeah, that's about it. Big weekend for OU baseball.
All right, and that's going to do it for us. We're going to be back again next week for another edition of the Unofficial 40 podcast, where I'm sure George will continue to uncover more and more in the portal. Remember, a lot of you will be listening to this on YouTube, so remember, you can go sign up for your Sooner Scoop subscription for just $1, and we'll give you 2 months. Use the promo code OU1. Just put that in there when you sign up, and you can get 2 months for just $1. Just a little taste, and then we know we'll have you hooked. So, but thanks to everybody for listening. Thanks to everybody for watching. Thanks to the 15,000 followers that we now have on YouTube. Let's get it to 20. Let's go. Let's kick it up another notch. So, appreciate all you guys. We'll see you again next week right here on another edition of the Unofficial 40 from Soonerscoop.com.